Welcome to Flower of Life podcast. My name is Carmen Fernandez, and today we're going to talk about consciousness, spiritual growth, and psychedelics. Because the times we're going through now are difficult times, historical times, and loads of people are now awakening, asking questions that didn't ask before. And today I'm with Gabriel Lugo. Gabriel is an expert on plant medicine. He's studying the law of one, and he's a philosopher of the physical and metaphysical reality. Welcome, Gabriel. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure.
Life is about experience, not about survival. And love is a driving force. This is one of your quotes, and I love it.
Thank you.
What do you mean? Can you elaborate on that quote?
Yeah, so the question of life is one that I guess baffles every human in this modern society that we live in. The ancients didn't ponder too much on this. They knew this was like kindergarten for them. Mm-hmm. You know, this basic question, and I guess we have been lost for several reasons into the material world just to grasp an idea of what our life is. And life now depends, and now, especially since we're talking about the COVID-19 situation and everything, that's why people's realities are shattering, because there is a constant seeking of the material world and not so much about the experience of life. And that's what our existence is, if you think about it. The question about life, who we are, and what we're doing goes basically to ask what's our purpose here? What are we doing on Earth? Why do we have a body? Why do we go through things? And what's the meaning of everything? And thinking about life as something that we achieve, I'm just gonna say like the complete extreme of the thought of life being a material type of illusion is that, you know, you're born, you get indoctrinated by a specific belief system, which includes education, culture, etc. You then grow into be a adolescent who needs to pick a path, narrow down their possibilities of being somebody, and then grow into adulthood to have, you know, the typical American dream life. So you can grow old, retire, and then have a peaceful death. That's the material side of, you know, life. And it's always accomplishing something that has been already created as a protocol, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just that in the view of the ancients and of the uncentralized dogmas and philosophies of life, it's not very conducive to spiritual growth, which is, you know, the central idea of why we're here. Now, once we pass kindergarten and we know what our purpose is, and we know that we're here to grow spiritually, then we can start seeing life as an experience, mm-hmm. rather than, you know, things that happen to us, but things that happen for us. And that's the closest way I can, I guess, do an introduction to what that means in terms of how life is an experience, and mm-hmm. we're here to navigate it with the only force that exists, which is love, and it's undeniable. No human being that can be challenged, I guess, you know, in its whole being can deny that. Love being the driving force of everything. And so that's how I kind of conceptualize the idea that life is an experience and the driving force is love.
Yeah, I like that. I love that, because sometimes I in my case, for example, in my experience, we learn that we have to achieve goals, that we have to be successful in life. We have to do things, and we're maybe too focused on the result, and we forget about the experience and the process, and how we can bring our the part of ourselves, the in the process, and the love in the process, instead of focusing on the result. And that's a more meaningful life when you focus on your experience and to bring love to everything that you do.
Sure. And that goes to explain also the fulfillment type of life that we have, because achieving something doesn't necessarily mean that you fulfill your, not your destiny. I think that's a very final sentence, but keep fulfilling your journey. And it's the little things that really matter when you go through your life, and you just enjoy the process, enjoy the experiences, as opposed to just wanting to achieve a specific goal and being blind about, you become this, like you said, so narrow focused on what you want to achieve that you ignore everything else that's happening around you, and this lends up to the idea of abandoning, family, friends, loved ones, just because you're so focused on one thing, which doesn't have to necessarily, I mean, when people work with their passion, it's a different thing. But it's I would say that there is no specific goal, but just letting the energy flow of you, and you have no idea where it's going to take you. And that to me is the uncertainty principle of the universe too, that when we focus, like you said, in a narrow goal or a purpose, and need to achieve that, then we kind of leave out the possibility that uncertainty is in the mix, in the equation. And at any moment, that can be completely gone from your life or substituted by something else. Now, I would say the best way to just deal with this uncertain factor in the equation is to know that nothing is final and everything can change. Be in allowance for that, and just permit yourself to keep working towards whatever you feel is right, but always allow something unpredictable to happen. And it's still hard for us as humans, when this happens, but you can still be prepared mentally with the tools to deal with an unexpected event that will lead you to have to change course inevitably. And you in the best way of your abilities, you have to just trust your higher self, for that matter, and leave it in its hands.
The law of one is the core of your beliefs, of your philosophy, and your understanding of the universe. How did you get interested in the law of one? How did you find the law of one?
It's a good question. I've always been, well, just a little background. I had no spirituality, absolutely none, for approximately 25 years, since I was 12 years old. And it wasn't until last year that I had my spiritual awakening through a plant medicine ceremony. And what's relevant to the question is that once that happened to me, I went from a narrow-minded conventional scientist to a lost soul in the new metaphysical reality that existed. So I kind of like opened up this. I remember saying to my mentor at the time that it was like I live in this closed box all my life, knowing everything about the walls and the floor and the intricacies of the angles and everything. And in my spiritual awakening, it's like all four walls, floor, ceiling blew off. And now I'm in this infinite space that it was amazing, but at the same time, it was, I'm not going to say scary, but it was uncomfortable for me to not understand. So this led me to a self-discovery path of having the same mindset that I used to have when it came to science and understanding reality from the conventional, narrow reductionist science to a new open science that has everything else into consideration. Now, again, because I wasn't into many metaphysical things, to me, all of that used to be pseudoscience and, things that they would make up and makes no sense, coincidence and all this stuff. But I kind of now needed a foothold into what this all meant. And I've never been a visual person when it comes to the imagination of just letting things, be, and the mystical side of it. I'm more into, the nuts and bolts that holds everything together. And the way I would start feel comfortable in this is to understand even more the fabric of reality. Let's just put it that way. Because to me, that's the way I view the universe before, and I had to see it now this way. Synchronistically, my mentor recommended me a book, and it was because I said, I'm thirsty for this information. Like, what do you recommend to me? What kind of book can I read? And he said, No Questions, The Law of One. However, it wasn't until probably like 4 or 5 months after he recommended this to me that I got into it, and I started reading it. And at first, it was complicated. It was very complex. It had so many words, and the terminology was like reading a different language. And once I started seeing that it was tying everything together with the utmost unemotional attachment to what it means to be a physical being and a spiritual being at the same time, or what Ra calls the mind, body, spirit complex, which is what we are, 3 different facets of our beingness in this reality. Then I started falling in love with it, and I said, I need to read more, I need to understand more. And but I've never been the person that follows something blindly. So synchronistically, again, many things started happening, and I started learning more things from different sources that will ultimately end up invalidating the law of one. So it was like I was reading the blueprint of this reality, and those things that didn't make much sense to me in the law of one were being validated somewhere else in different things, whether this be from ancient texts to prophecies to quantum physics to anecdotal experience of UFOs and so on and so forth. So everything that can possibly be explained was at some level in the law of one. So that's how I started getting into it, and I realized that this is what describes me the most as the person that I am. And from there, I just started, I guess, diving deeper into what this all means, and especially what it means for us, not just the understanding of all this intangible stuff, but what's the practical stuff that we can get out of the law of one and apply it to our spiritual growth, which is the only reason we're here in this planet. So that's how I got into it.
The law of one is a recompilation of books or conversations, right? Conversations. I think it is 106 conversations.
Yes. So this entity, the law of one. Well, first of all, the law of one is, as it's known for the raw contact, but the law of one it's simply the best way I can describe it in few words is the ultimate goal that we have as spiritual beings. No matter which path you take, no matter what experience you have, you are all bound by the law of one. We are all bound by the law of one, because in the end of our creation in the universe, we are inevitably passing through the law of one, which can be seen as a mass amount of experience that leads to a funneling of the law of one, which creates unity in the end for us to transcend and go back to the creator. So that's what the law of one is. Now, in terms of what we know here in the material, we know the raw contact as being the biggest expression of the law of one in content, but there have been other channels and I'll explain that. Ra is just another entity, and we can get into that if you want, but it's a social memory complex, and that's basically a higher dimensional beingness that channeled information to a group of people that were already working with channelers in the 70s. For like 8 years they were doing this, and they happened to have the contact with Ra, and he explained basically everything to them. It was 106 sessions, like you said, and they got information of all sorts. The Law of One continued after 1984, being channeled by the same or other channelers, but different entities. The most renowned, I guess, would be Latui, Kuo, and Haton, which are different entities, just like Ra. Mm-hmm. And these, again, are higher density entities who are giving information about the Law of One, which, again, it's the Law of One. And just to give a little bit of context, each density of reality, us being in third density, has a specific law, which is the seeking, if you will, of our experience. Now that we mentioned our mm-hmm. experience of life, and what do we say? The driving force is love. Mm-hmm. So love is the seeking that we have here. But in our third density, this is the density of choice, because this is where we choose between our two paths. And after we choose our path, we're inevitably going into the next density of consciousness, which is everybody who's listening to this and is, in some way into the current spirituality terminology, it's what we're calling fourth and fifth density of consciousness. So we're going through that. And now in fourth density consciousness, then we will have another kind of governing law that's going to make us grow spiritually. And then it goes on to fifth and sixth density.
So the Law of One applies to the third.
It applies to everything, to be honest. It applies to every density in consciousness up until the seventh, because the Law of One is the governing law of sixth density, which again is an experience. The best way I can describe the densities of consciousness, which are really only third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh density, those are the ones that carry information of awareness, of the universe being aware of itself, us being a fractalized portion of the universe, being aware of ourselves. Mm-hmm. So it applies to every single level of consciousness from third to sixth. And from seven, then we open a different gateway, which is a different topic, but it governs everything. While it's not 100% necessary for us to understand the Law of One to experience life here, and this, it's the biggest disclaimer I can give is that we don't need to know what the Law of One is. It's supplementary to understanding, our experience here, but it is the governing law. So it's almost like you don't need to understand how gravity works for mm-hmm. you to live on Earth or any other planet for that matter, but it is a law that, is part of this universe. So it's we can dive into it and we can understand more, and we can plan our life based on the Law of One or gravity being a law. But you don't have to understand them, to live in this planet, get your experience, and move on, if mm-hmm. that makes sense.
Yes. And this Ra was, who is Ra?
That's a good question. So Ra is known in our history as the god of the sun in ancient Egypt. And it's in its own way, it's known as the god that gave scripture and the god that gave information and light to the Egyptians back 8,000-10,000 years ago. However, that's our recopilation of information that we have from this experience passed on from scriptures and human interaction. Ra, in the sense of the beingness that they represent, are a sixth density social memory complex, and I'll explain that so it makes sense, and I'm not throwing just mm-hmm. empty terminology there. But they are if we are from third, they are from sixth density consciousness, meaning that they are from a higher dimension of understanding and love. And they became what is called a social memory complex. Now, we as a planet are a mind, body, spirit complex planets, meaning that we haven't achieved social memory yet. That's the process that we're going through. This is what everybody's talking about, the collective consciousness. The collective consciousness is a grid or a network of information that we all share, but because of our current behaviors and our I would say belief systems of what the world is, we have this discrepancy of thought. So it's almost like a brain. We are the brain of the planet, and we're having seizures all the time because we don't have this connectivity between each other and the seeking of love and oneness between us. So there's no harmony. It's the best way I can describe it. So once we transcend from third density into fourth density, we will start working a lot more into coherence in our structure as a social memory complex. And that's where we will achieve social memory. So it's almost like an evolution of our beingness. The concept of oneness is what really describes everything. We are trying to achieve oneness in the end. That's our purpose. There is no division. There is a path of division, which is the negative polarity, but let's not concern ourselves with that. Just in the sense of the path that we as positive beings are seeking, we're seeking oneness. And in our seeking of oneness, we find that every step we take is leading us there. So we as a complex that we represent in planet Earth, we're seeking that. We're looking for harmony between us to understand each other and to finally move on to fourth density, where the work for creating a memory complex or a social memory complex where everybody shares thoughts and emotions and love, then we can start creating this magnificent future that, it's inevitable in the end, but we're moving towards too. So that's what Ra is. They have already achieved that social memory complex status, and they are bound to us by many means that we can discuss, but they're basically the future of us in a sense, if that makes sense.
So they communicated with us before when in the Egyptians. That's
correct. They have
and
been
is there
here.
any teachings from that connection, from that communication? Is there any teachings or any books?
Is there a what?
Recorded? Like, is there any kind of documents or books that have been?
Yeah. So there is, the only thing we have from their source was what we have from the Egyptians, right? Whatever they got, it was unfortunately, well, let's go back to the origins of the Egyptians in that way. Because of the Atlantean catastrophe that happened approximately 11 to 12,000 years ago, there was a measure of urgency to repair the planet. And one of the things they created was the pyramid. That's why the pyramids, especially the Great Pyramid of Giza, is in this what they call the navel of the world. It's centered perfectly in the grid of the planet. So it was like a healing structure that was created in Egypt, specifically because that's the point in the geometry of the Earth that would create a safety into what the Atlanteans did back then. Once they did that, it was also created for the proliferation of philosophy, which is based on the law of one. And this, we're talking about 12,000 years ago. That's why the pyramids were created. It had multiple purposes, and one of them being the teachings of the law of one and the philosophies that derive from there. Everything else that we know from ancient history and ancient civilizations are in some sense bound to the law of one that Ra and its people wanted to create. However, one of the things that happened, and Ra explains this, is that the Egyptians took this philosophy in the wrong way, meaning humans as we are, they geared it towards power and control. So the elite were the only ones allowed in Egypt to have the technology used for the ascension process, which is what the pyramid is. It's an initiation chamber, if you will, of the human for the ascension that is our ultimate goal. So that's what we have as a legacy from them. Just part of what Ra says also is that once they realized that the elites in Egypt started misusing the pyramid and all the teachings, they retired from here. They went away and they never came back, but in thought form, which is how they channel information. They never came back physically. So that was the last time they came here, and they gave us, I guess, physical means by which we can go on with our purpose here.
Mm-hmm.
But they continue to have contact with us. I think about 4,000, 3,000 years ago, they talked or contacted somebody else in Egypt. I believe it was Akhenaten, the pharaoh at the time. And after that, I don't think they came back until 1981, which they found, the group known as LNL Research, Carla, Dunn, and Jim, who did the channeling back then.
And these I know these books, the Law of One books, are a bit complex to read and to understand. How do you translate what you read in these books to the applications in your daily life?
It's a process. It's the first thing I would say. There's no way I can say that the first time I read it, even though it resonated with me tremendously, and it still does, it was the first time it was just like connecting with it. And the second read, you start making more sense of it because now you understand more of the concepts and the terminology and so on. And the more I read it, the more I can get information out of it, for the purposes of understanding the practical use of the law of one here. And as complex as it is, it's only validating everything that we know already. There's nothing new in those books. And it may sound contradictory for me to say it, because that's what I dedicate my life to right now, is understanding and explaining some of the concepts based on my interpretation. Of course, I have no final interpretation of this. I think everybody should read it. And if there's any dissonance at any point, ignore what I say and just go read the material and see if there's anything that resonates with them. But everything that I read there is already in other philosophies. It's in every religion, is in every dogma that exists out there that is trying to improve human life. So this is nothing groundbreaking. This is nothing that tells us more about what we already know. If anything, it's just a different angle. It's like how we say that we have over 2,000 different religions based on Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all pointing at the same things, the same philosophy. It's just interpreted differently. So in the end, we're looking at the same thing. So the application of the law of one, in a sense, is just, to me, it would be more of a validation for those who like the structure, understanding of reality, and our purpose and our destiny here, and understanding, of course, beyond. Because one of the things that happens, and we can find this in the Bible, everybody's talking about the Bible being a metaphor and, parables and things like that, because it's kind of hard to explain something of this caliber, of what the universe is to humans. Even I struggle with it. As much as I can read about it, I struggle to tie in concepts that to me sometimes don't make sense, and I can just make my best, to understand them. But that's I would say the practical purpose of this is just to see what's the thing that resonates the most for you in terms of understanding your own life and your own spiritual growth, as opposed to understanding so much the external world. I think here we have a thick veil between us and the creator, God, the source, whatever they want to call it. That thick veil is just preventing us from seeing ourselves as the creator. And one of the things that Ra reinforces the most, which again, it's Jesus philosophies all the way. And there's some Jesus mentioning in the Law of One as well, which I think is pretty interesting of his story. But the core thing is just to realize that you are the creator, that you are a part of this creation, not because you are created by somebody, but because you are a fractalized version of the creator itself, which is everybody. And once you understand that, it's so easy to see that me and you are the same. The people listening to this are the same as me and you and all of those in the galaxy, and by extension, everybody in the universe. So there is a subtle concept of oneness in the idea that you are the creator as well as everybody else, which, I mean, we can extrapolate every single philosophy of life, which means don't do harm to others. You're harming yourself. I often use the analogy like we are cells. The universe is just multi-cells, infinite cells that exist in an organism. Damaging one cell in your own body is damaging yourself. So that's another way to see, how we are part of just one creation, and the necessity of seeing oneness in everybody.
And how your life has changed since you started to be more interested in studying the Law of One?
I have a better grip of my reality. I can understand it a lot more. It was kind of scary, and I'll just be personal here, and I'll tell you that when I started discovering that the metaphysical world was not pseudoscience, that I felt, I felt in my journey very, I felt naked. All my previous knowledge, all my books that I read about science, and all the things that I knew about this reality and how the body works and consciousness, if I ever had an idea of what that was, all of that to me was stripped away. I was naked. Like I said, I had no grips in this earth aside from everything being a lie that I was told. Not necessarily a lie, but there was so much to it that it was like a big veil, or like I said, the box that I was living in. So for me to be comfortable with myself, I needed to get more information as to how this worked. Of course, a lot of fears, started creeping in about the negative beings that existed in the universe and how they influence our lives and how they exist within us. And, old fears from my childhood crept up again, from fear of darkness and fear of demons and all these things, which, now to answer the question, all those fears have gone away. They went away pretty quick because I started understanding the concept of oneness again. And, which means, and I'll say, just because I touch on the topic of demons and the idea of negative beings kind of influencing our life, is that we have, as positive beings, all we have to give is love. And that's not only restrained or restricted to positive beings, it's also to negative beings. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I've gotten so far, is that especially now when there's so much chaos in how we perceive the world, the population, and the people in our Earth right now, in humanity, with all the negative stuff that's being exposed out there in the news. We have to understand that each and every one of them are playing a part in this reality for us to grow, and the appreciation and love and gratitude for each and one of those that the media and social interaction is deeming evil and malevolent and must be chastised and so on. They deserve our love. They deserve our recognition and appreciation, because that's us anyways, if that makes sense. So that's how I would say it changed a little bit my perspective and how it started helping me to see the world in general. But yeah, it's all about the perception of our world, and especially where we're heading.
And the plant medicines, like the psychedelics, like plants who have psychedelic effects, they help us to connect with that wisdom, right?
That's correct. So it's a tricky road to navigate, because plant medicine, or let's open up with the biggest distinction, which is psychedelics in general. Psychedelics are substances that create a portal, if you will, between our conscious and our subconscious. Now, through this, we kind of gaze or peek through the windows of the veil that separates our physical reality and the metaphysical. That's why psychedelics have this dissolving your physical reality kind of effect. They like Terence McKenna said, they dissolve boundaries, because what we are, physical matter, is just boundaries. I can fully touch you because you are made of atoms who repulse me negatively by the electrons and so on. But in the metaphysical, everything is like meshed together. So it's a useful brain that we have to separate us from the metaphysical, because we need this to experience their density. But once psychedelics getting into our beingness, then we start peaking in the metaphysical. And the thing is that we do it through our consciousness, and our consciousness in this density without guidance is kind of tricky, because we can encounter all types of experiences in this universe once we are in what we would call time space, which is the other side of this space-time, which is the physical one. So psychedelics in general do this, but plant medicine, when truly done under the supervision of facilitators and shamans, they guide you through the navigation of your own journey, because everybody has their own grasp of the metaphysical world and what needs to be explored, so to speak. So that's a big distinction. Psychedelics are one thing, and plant medicine, being part of psychedelics, have a type of spirit that is guiding you. And the sacred space and everything in terms of the plant medicine is important, because you want to create a safe environment from entities who may not have the best interest in your growth spiritually. So it's a big lesson I learned in my times doing my ceremonies in with different plant medicines, is that you have to guard yourself when you go into this, because it's almost like a trip into the unknown, and you want to have a guide with you, or as many guides as you can. So it's a useful way, for sure, if done properly, to navigate your own self. Because again, we are thrown in this reality confused as to who we are. We're thrown in with amnesia. We have no idea who we are. And even everything that I'm saying right now, I cannot prove. There's no physical way I can prove that anything that I'm saying is true. Ra can be a lie. The metaphysical reality can be a lie. For what science is concerned, nothing is real, and only what we can measure repeatedly. So for us to navigate and know this reality, we need to have some connection, which the ancients always called, the cord that we have with our spirit, and that can be reinforced for sure with psychedelics, again, if done properly. So that's just my take on it. People are free to experience, their own way to navigate the psychedelic experience, but that's just my take on that.
You have an online course where you teach about plant medicine.
That's right. I created that, to be honest, because that was the resonance I had at the time, and I realized, I would talk to people about psychedelics, but once I started talking more broadly about it, I realized that there was a lot of confusion when it came to it. And by no means am I an expert on psychedelics. All I have is an experience with different plant medicine, different ceremonies. I've met incredible people in this communities, and I have, because again, my obsession with knowing how things work led me to find out more about psychedelics. I didn't just want to do something without thinking, and that led me to investigate so much more about what plant medicine is. But that was just for personal use, basically, just for me to know and have a good idea of what I was doing. But because of that, like I said, once I started talking to more people and be more public about it, I realized that there was people that didn't kind of understand this, and they were afraid, where they shouldn't be afraid, or they were too bold to do things that they should be more cautious about. And they didn't really understand the difference between, the spirit of the plant and psychedelics in general. I started getting questions once I started opening up myself to what I was doing. And all this led me to create something that, based on my understanding and how I created it, because I started receiving that much attention, I said, this is the perfect opportunity for me to offer some of my own experiences and how I perceive this for those who resonate with me. So again, the course is not like I'm a shaman or anything like that. I don't have the honor of doing that, but it's my experiences, my anecdotes, and it's my perception as to how people should approach the psychedelic experience, for sure. And it's more like a cautious approach. And there's a lot of understandings that I got, and I still stand for, of course, for everything that is the unknown in the realm of plant medicine.
Can you tell us about one of the experiences in those ceremonies?
Sure. Which one? You pick one. I have the most I would cherish are ayahuasca, for sure, and the magic mushrooms. Which one would you want to hear about?
I tried ayahuasca, but I've never tried magic mushrooms.
So you want to know about magic mushrooms?
Yes. Or both.
Yeah. So let me start by actually talking about ayahuasca a little bit, and then we'll dive into magic mushrooms. But ayahuasca it's called Mother Aya for a reason, Madre Aya, right? And every single substance, plant medicine, has like a pseudonym, right? That's why it's called Mother Aya. There is grandpa, which is the cactus that we find. Peyote is called here. and it's San Pedro in our countries. They all have a spirit that kind of resonates with the archetypes that we have here in the human experience. Magic mushrooms are called niños because they're so mischievous. They're like little children, and the experience that you get, say with you experience the soothing effect and the calmness of ayahuasca. Magic mushrooms are those driving you through the metaphysical reality in a way that it's very tricky. It's a very mischievous experience. That doesn't mean it's not useful, but it's you're on for a ride. So I actually describe this as an amusement park. The amusement park it's an analogy that I used to use when I talk about psychedelics and other things in general. But imagine that you have a guide when you go to the amusement park, and Mother Aya is your mom. She's going to take care of you. She's going to fill you with love. She's going to take care of you. It's going to be a ride. You're going to have to face your fears, in certain rides, and you're going to have to face different things in your experience while in the amusement park. The amusement park being the psychedelic experience. So when you go with, say, San Pedro, which is, the abuelo, the grandpa, he's going to take you in a very stern way, do this, do that. This is how you do it. Very structured. Niños, it's like your cousins, they're going to be playing with you a lot, but they're going to guide you, they're still going to take care of you. The experience itself it's very chaotic in a way. But it could be anything. I mean, that's why magic mushrooms have that reputation of bringing you sometimes to places that you feel extremely uncomfortable. But they do it for a reason. The spirits take you there for a reason, and it's because you have to face that. And while, say, Mother Aya would do it in a very, I would say, caring way, like a mother would. Not
very soft kind of way.
Yeah, very caring, very loving. Niños would do it, in a very harsh lesson. They would show you who you are without too much consideration. And in the end, it's the same because you're facing yourself, and all you're doing here in any psychedelic experience is facing yourself. Now, the entities guiding you are the ones that are going to present you in different ways. But I think that's the best way I can just generally describe, the experience, because again, you're facing yourself, and I don't know anybody, that does it truly. So whatever they experience is going to be themselves. But the spirit of the plants is definitely going to guide you in a different way. So, my experience, I would say that I have a very high tolerance for some reason. It might be my brain, very logical, very male, left-oriented thinking that blocks me from getting the most out of a very small dose. So I need a large dose. And in exploring with that, with the guide of my mentor and the shaman doing this with me, I one time had to do what Terence McKenna would call the heroic dose, which was over 5 grams of magic mushroom. And I can tell you that it was the most profound experience out of this world that I ever had, ever. And it was such a sense of unity and of everything. I was the universe and the universe was me. And it wasn't a sense of superiority of any kind. It was just everything was me, and everything, doing anything against anything would be doing it against myself. The creation itself, the purpose of our beingness. It was just a magnificent way. And of course, I had my rough rides. I had to confront several things. And fear would creep up here and there, but just having that sacred space, it's enormous. So you're in a safe place and you can just confront them and go on.
Mm-hmm. Do you have like an intention before taking the plant medicine, and then when you have this confront your fears or your shadows, is what you need in order to heal, to achieve that intention that you had at the beginning?
Good question. You always, this is the saying, you never get what you want, you get what you need, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, I had intentions on each and one of my ceremonies. So it's just part of the process, and you never get anything that you ask for, not right away.
You don't know what you need.
Yeah, not in the ceremony itself, but you do get, because the thing is that we don't know what are the obstacles between us and what we want. Mm-hmm. We can have the most noble intention into what we want, but if we are not behaving in the way that is conducive to that goal, and we are self-sabotaging ourselves without even knowing it subconsciously. Mm-hmm. The easiest example is to say, my first ceremony, one of the things that I asked for was to be of better service to other people, to find a way to be of better service to other people, because I was so dedicated to it. And the problem is that you cannot serve others if you don't serve yourself well. It's like you can't love others if you don't love yourself. And every complication that you find in that path is because you need to heal yourself, like you said. Mm-hmm. And, healing yourself it's a rough road, because healing yourself fundamentally means that you need to acknowledge that you're not who you think you are. Healing yourself means that you look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am lying to myself. Every single thing that I say about myself is a lie. And this is nothing to be ashamed or embarrassed of. It's just acknowledging that even those things that you're proud of, even those things that, you think you are put to the question, and you should question it all the time. Not because you don't want to be those things, but because you know that you can be something better. And by being something better in your life, in yourself, you are ditching everything that you are in the past. Which again, in our mentality seems like it's, and I find this a lot with clients and people that I talk to in general when we're talking about this topic, is that they feel like it was a waste of time doing all this to get here. Mm-hmm. It was a waste of time because I can no longer be this person. That's nonsense. You should be grateful of everything that you went through. And now, even if you shifted 180 degrees, now you are something different. But then again, it's that constant questioning that's going to lead you to do that shift, lest be you conduce to the same path of comfort and being the same person. So I would say that's the biggest thing, in terms of healing yourself and being open to change and being open to any event that happens in your life. The only thing that you can do is be grateful for the event, mm-hmm. see it with love. We're finding the love in it. And I know it's hard sometimes, but that's just what we're left with.
What are the benefits of plant medicine, and what would you say to someone who is afraid to trying plant medicine?
Well, like I was alluding all this time, the benefit is the same fear that you have, so you fear confronting yourself, and that's the benefit, that you will find yourself in it. So the more you are aligned with yourself, the less fear you have of confronting yourself, because that's all there is. And it's a funny question, because in ceremonies, most ceremonies, if not all of them, they, like in the setting where you are, and I don't know if they did this where you went, but mirrors are covered, phones are turned off. you are not allowed to see yourself, even in a mirror, because you can get lost. And this is no like metaphysical thing. It's just you can actually get lost for hours looking in the mirror, depending on how intense your experience is, because that's all you're doing. You're facing yourself, and the inability to recognize this during a ceremony or an experience is what leads you into a downward spiral of, a bad trip that they talk about, because you are in denial of who you are and what you're facing. This can be traumas. This can be, things about your past that you never fully accepted. This could be behaviors that you're doing right now that you think are the best, and they're not conducive to your health. They are not the path to your true self and healing. So the benefit is that you will discover who you are, and the fear that people are having is that they are afraid of finding out who they truly are, because that means you have to break up of a lot of insecurities. You have to break out of damaging relationships. You have to break away from the patterns and behaviors that you have been conditioned upon, and layers of belief systems that may tell you who you think you are, but you will be shattered. And that's why I say that psychedelics are not for everybody. Psychedelics are for people who are already committed to finding something in themselves that they already acknowledge that it's not who they are. So the benefit of the psychedelic can be the most terrifying thing for some people. So it's a choice.
You need to be ready for it.
You need to, yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Gabriel. Can you tell us where people can find you?
Sure. Thank you. First, I have mainly my YouTube channel, where YouTube is my platform for broadcasting. Facebook is my place where I just share things, everything, basically.
What is the name of your YouTube and?
My YouTube channel is, I have one in Spanish and one in English. English is Gaia Awakens, and it's the same in Spanish, Gaia Despierta. And I make content in both languages just because I want to reach people. And my Facebook is just one, my personal page where everybody can friend me and, just share things with me. And Instagram is just for everything else that I do, my silly life and whatnot. So those are my pages. I do have a page where I have some of my content, which is GaiaAwakens.com. And that's it. That's where people can find me online.
And Gaia Awakens, that's where you have your online course and you do coaching as well?
That's right. Yes. If people are interested, they can go there.
So what are you, can you explain a little bit about more what you do?
Sure. I would like to call myself a spiritual listener, because there's no teaching that comes without learning, and there's a certain amount of things that I learned from people when I'm working with them to find out what's the best I can help them with. So I am a listener, and I put things into context. I shift perspective in people, because that's all we need. That's all I have learned myself. That is what's worked for me and what it's worked for everybody else who has had, just like in a psychedelic experience we talked about, the allowance to be changed by something. You need to be in allowance to change yourself, when you want to change your perspective. So that's what I do. I help people change their perception of life in a way that it's more, congruent with what they want, whatever that may be. So that's, I would say that's the core of it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Gabriel.
Thank you. It's been amazing. I love it.
I really like your conversation with you, because it's so interesting.
Thank you.
And for you guys, check Gabriel's website. Gaia Awakens. He has an online course where he teaches about plant medicine. He does also coaching sessions, and in his YouTube channel, Gaia Awakens, he talks about the law of ones and consciousness and all this what we have been talking about today, but more in detail. Thank you, and talk to you in the next episode.
Thank you.